All right, we're moving into the final section of the program. Now, I think I've already done a good job of convincing you how important even crucial conversation skills are, and how that improving them can literally change your life, not just in regards to meeting women, but also when it comes to making friends, making money, and just having fun in different social situations. Conversation, as I've said over and over again, is the highest leverage skill you can learn. There's nothing that if you work on can improve so many different areas of your life as is conversation skills. Throughout the program, you've learned plenty of techniques and tactics that most men are never going to know. And you've learned stuff that has over and over again been tested and proven to work. Well, now it's time to put it into action, which is why I want to focus the final 2 audio sessions on practicing and implementing everything you've learned. So why do I want to spend time talking about this idea of practice? Well, the reason practice is so important is because, first of all, the information is available. I mean, there's websites galore, videos on YouTube, there's courses, there's books out there with this information of how to be a better conversationalist or how to pick up women. There's coaching available. I mean, you can hire a coach for a couple $1,000s, some of them even less, and they'll work with you for a couple days, teaching you everything they know. And yet guys continue to struggle year after year. And what I've come to understand is that it's the way that you're practicing which is probably causing you to continue to struggle. I remember as I was learning a lot of this stuff, I would read everything. And I would have this feeling of being completely certain that I knew it. I really felt dead certain that I knew it. I would even be able to explain it well to others. I'd teach it to other people. But then I would get in field, I'd get in front of women, and I'd just get this cloud of nervousness that would come over me. And I would start to revert back to all my old habits. I would completely forget to use any of the material I had spent all this time studying and all this time teaching to other people. And what I realized is what had happened here was there was a scientific study out years back that proved that pressure retards learning. And what this means is that when you learn under pressure and you mess up, you're actually heavily ingraining that bad behavior in your genetics. So, for example, a swimmer who... Let's say you're teaching a guy how to swim and he's never swum before, and you bring him into the middle of a lake and you throw him off a boat and you say, hey, either you're going to swim to shore or you're going to die. Well, that guy may be able to swim to shore, but his swimming technique is going to be so cockeyed and so non-right that you will never be able to train that guy to be a professional swimmer because he learned under such high pressure that as he's trying to get to shore and he's doing all his breaststrokes backwards and he's doing all these mistakes and he's doggy paddling, that's getting so ingrained in him that next time he goes to swim, that's going to be his natural state. And what's worse is that by continuing this, you're actually forming this habit. So if he does it more than once, it's going to get harder and harder to break it. And even worse is that as you begin to fear it, you begin to create a self-fulfilling prophecy, which means as you begin to fear going out and speaking to women, you're going to speak to less women, you're going to get nervous, and you're going to kind of repeat this cycle. And what happens to a lot of guys is after repeating this cycle a few times of getting in field, going out and saying, hey, I'm going to go and approach these girls with this opener, and I'm going to transition into a good conversation, but then they get in field, they get in front of the woman, they stall out, they run out of things to say, or they just revert back to this boring small talk. A few times that happens, and they just start getting so nervous that that's going to happen that they just start avoiding conversations completely, and eventually they give up. So what is the cure for this? How do you overcome this? Well, what I've figured out is something that I like to call sparring practice. I realized that I was going out on weekends and the pressure was on. I was horny as hell. All the eyes of my friends were on me, and I could almost never get better. It just, the pressure was too great, and I almost started to not even want to go out on the weekends anymore. And by this point, I was aware that every misstep I was taking was just reinforcing my bad habits and my bad self-image. So I created a concept I call sparring practice. Basically, a boxer who's trying to get better at maybe throwing a left jab, he'll never achieve that goal if the only person he's practicing against is an opponent who wants to kick the crap out of him. So what does he do? What he does is he finds a friendly, non-competitive opponent to go a few rounds with, allowing him to work on his problem areas and even perfect some new techniques that he's been learning. Since it's a low-pressured environment and he's not worried about getting pummeled on his ass, he can actually use these new techniques the way they were meant to be used. Well, I realized this was a major problem with all the instructors telling students to go out there and practice. First of all, when you're horny and desperate, it's nearly impossible to separate yourself from the outcome when you're in front of the first beautiful woman you've talked to all week. Sparring practice is how you solve this problem. Sparring practice simply means taking one new technique you're learning and drilling it down in low-pressured environments. For me, how I first figured this out was when I was dating a girl I had no interest in moving the relationship forward. I was with her simply because at the time, I was too scared to go back out into the dating arena. And instead of breaking up with her and going back out and becoming that hungry wolf again, I decided that I would stay with her until I got better. It does sound kind of asshole-ish, but I was a rebound guy for her too, so I don't think she was extremely optimistic that this relationship was going anywhere. We were both basically using each other. Anyway, so as I learned these new techniques, I would practice them on her and her friends. If I read an article about cold reading, later that night I would simply focus on using cold reads in conversations I was having with her friends, and with other girls that I was close proximity to. And I would use cold reads with her friends, my friends, coworkers, just about anyone, and I wouldn't care if I fell flat. I wouldn't care if I didn't sound smooth or if I lost attraction, because I wasn't going for attraction. I was just going for the skill building process. The only way I was going to learn cold reading was by to do it in field. By doing it on people that I didn't care about the results from, I was able to just do it and work on the technique rather than the outcome. And also what I was doing was I was creating a habit of spotting cold reading opportunities. When you're focusing on building a skill rather than on the results, you're starting to learn to look at things differently, which meant, because I wasn't using a cold read as a means of getting attraction, I was just using it to learn how to incorporate that into my conversation. Now when I was out actually trying to meet girls that I was attracted, I was more used to using a cold read, and it came out much more naturally. The same thing could be said about developing cocky, funny humor, or teasing, or grounding yourself, or telling better stories, and all the other skills that myself and my co-hosts are going to be discussing with you in this program. You want to perfect one thing at a time, and you want to create new habits in your conversation that lead to big change. If you take the information you learn in this course and you go out and try to practice all of it on the first pretty girl you see in a bar, you're going to get disastrous results. But if you bring a new element into every conversation that you have, and you do this every day for a month, you'll find that your conversations will naturally include many of these techniques and skills. You won't have to be out there thinking about using them. They will become your reactions. Right now, your reactions are probably flawed. The reactions that currently come to you naturally, you learned erroneously. So sparring practice is basically skill building when it doesn't count, when there's nothing on the line, and when you're unconcerned with an outcome. There's another concept I call shadow boxing, and this is fighting an imaginary battle, training yourself every day for the big game, so to speak. The best athletes in the world do this. They practice by themselves, day in, day out, rehearsing in their mind exactly how it will look. Most of us have been doing the exact opposite. We sit around and play over and over again images of our conversation stalling out, of the nervousness overtaking our minds, of the bored look on a woman's face. And of course, if you play that outcome over and over again, that's the outcome you're going to continue to get. Our imagination is the key to the universe. I'm going to tell you two keys to the universe. The first one is your imagination. The second one is speed of implementation, which I'm going to talk about in the final session. Our imagination is what put men on the moon. It's what built skyscrapers. It's what caused explorers in the 1400s to get on a ship and sail across an ocean having no clue where they were going because they thought that there was this better world. Your imagination is what sparks that creativity and that quick thinking that's necessary to carry an interesting and intelligent conversation. You can learn all the techniques in the world, but if your imagination hasn't been trained to use them, it will continue to hand you boring, inane things to talk about. I actually want to do a little exercise with you to kind of explain what I mean about getting what you focus on and missing other opportunities because you're focused on something else. What I want you to do is I want you to quickly, wherever you are, take a look around your room or wherever you are. Take a look around really quickly and focus on everything that's blue. Look for all the blue things surrounding you. Got 'em? Okay, now close your eyes and tell me all of the brown things in your room. Not so easy, right? You were spending all your time looking for the blue things. You didn't see any of the brown things. Well, how this relates to conversations is, if you view yourself as a bad conversationalist, you're only going to see the opportunities for the conversation to die out or stall. You're only going to focus on the bored look on the woman's face. And that's all your imagination will know. If you see yourself as a good conversationalist and you've practiced this in your mind of commanding the attention of a conversation, you're going to focus when you're out in the field on the positive vibes you're getting, and it's going to allow you to continue to propel forward. Through the concept of shadowboxing, we can mentally rehearse, even rehearse out loud, our new, improved, free-flowing, confident conversations. A lot of guys complain about their voice not being powerful. Well, the only way you're going to change that is by working on it during your time. No one has the desire to help you improve your voice tone. If you want to change it, then you have to get out there and spar, focusing on your new voice. And you have to spend time on your own, at home, feeling more confident about your voice tone, practicing it out loud, bringing up the feeling of being surrounded by a group of people all talking louder than you, and then practice projecting your voice into that imaginary conversation. And you have to imagine the way everyone will stop, turn, and look at you in eager anticipation of what you have to say. You might feel weird about this at first, but the only thing I can say is that this is absolutely no different than Tiger Woods spending hours practicing his golf swing alone, imagining the ball flying hundreds of yards, or LeBron James taking jump shot after jump shot alone on the court, but imagining fans screaming his name, the game on the line, and this jump shot winning or losing the finals. This is no different than Barack Obama standing in front of a mirror practicing his speech and anticipating the questions he'll get from the reporters and practicing his responses. This dedication is what makes these people the best in the world at what they do. You're going to learn secrets and techniques that you'll be able to implement immediately during this program, and these techniques will need very little practice. But to really take it to the next level, you need to practice the same way these guys do. And like I said earlier, this stuff is worth practicing. Conversation skills is worth practicing. If you're serious about improving your conversation skills, I recommend that you go out and purchase a mini recorder and a small microphone. This is going to be used for two purposes. First, to practice at home and hear the way you sound as you talk. You want to notice the flaws, the flow, the pitch differences. Listen to yourself tell a story. Pay attention to the differences that a pause makes. Notice when you're using sarcasm if you sound mean. Notice the intricacies of the way you're speaking. The second purpose of buying this tape recorder is to bring it in field with you. And then what you want to do is you want to listen to your conversations. You want to notice what worked and what didn't. Notice how most women are reacting to certain things you're saying. Train yourself to be a reactor. Once you see a pattern in how women react to things you say, you can always be one step ahead of them. That's how the greatest salesmen become the greatest salesmen in the world, is they learn what the objections are and they begin to know what somebody's going to say before they say it. And that way they always have a good, clear idea of what they're going to say next. So just to go back over what we learned about practicing, first you want to use it by sparring. And sparring is low pressure practice where the outcome doesn't matter so much as the skill you're trying to acquire. And what you want to do is you want to fill out different things that you want to implement. Much of it I will discuss in my session at the end of the program. I'm going to recap everything and kind of talk more in depth about how to take these ideas of sparring and how to take these ideas of shadowboxing and use them for implementing the techniques you're going to be learning. The final thing you want to do is you want to get yourself comfortable letting certain phrases flow out of your mouth. Get comfortable reading reactions. And when you're not in the company of other people, you want to spend your time shadowboxing. And once again, this is mentally rehearsing yourself in the midst of a great conversation. See yourself standing in a bar surrounded by people and then begin telling your conversation out loud to yourself. I remember when I was little, I would stand in my driveway throwing a wiffle ball against my square strike zone that I painted on my garage, imagining that there were thousands of people in the audience and this was the World Series and the game was on the line and I had to strike this batter out. And it was just me and a little square box. But in my mind, I saw the audience. I saw the batter at the home plate and I saw the catcher giving me the signals and I would throw the wiffle ball. And I was like training myself where had I ever gotten in that position of being in front of thousands of people pitching with the game on the line, I think I would have felt a lot more comfortable because I got the emotion out of it from doing that. And this is similar if you saw the movie Reservoir Dogs. Mr. Orange had to practice his routine for hours trying to perfect it so that when he went undercover as a thief, all the other thieves would believe him. And he had to really get it down and practice and rehearse it out loud and get comfortable in his mind being in front of these really violent gangsters. And that's how you do it. Remember, what you're learning is a skill that will get you talk about some of the biggest lessons I've learned in life that you want. More women, more money, more friends. I'm also going to reveal some of the mindsets that I found useful. This is the only skill in life that can offer you that. It is the only one. How to take what you've learned and create practice regimens around it. Is as highly leverageable as conversation in the first session. Nothing. If you don't learn how to play sports, to figure out a practice regimen, relate to your ability to make money, unless you become a professional shadow boxing, or using whatever, but infield high pressure practice directly relate to create all other areas of your life. If you spend your time playing video games, it's not going to directly relate to other areas of your life. You're gonna make. If you spend your time studying, even if you went to create, some people think studying is the highest way you create habits. You can go to school for 15 years. Getting hundreds of degrees, and it's not going to affect your life as just in regards to mastering the ability to hold the conversation. I actually have this on my computer in highlighter on a index card taped to my computer. It says speed of implementation. I've been to many seminars, read many books, talked with hundreds of students on all different subjects, met with some of really successful entrepreneurs, guys high up the ladder in business, guys that are just unbelievable with women. And the one constant that I found, the one thing that all of them shared, is they were able to implement really quickly what they learn. And those who implement the quickest, they see results. The rest of the people delay, procrastinate, search for perfection. They try to learn everything about a subject, and they never get around to actually implementing knowledge, the techniques, and the concepts that they spent all this time learning. So yes, I have speed of implementation on my computer, and it's to remind me that everything that you learn, it kind of feels good to expand your mind. But if you're not putting it into practice, and if you're not putting it into practice quickly, like as soon as you learn it, going out and putting it into reality and kind of ingraining it in yourself a little bit, it's not going to have any sort of effect on you. So in this session, which I'm actually breaking up into two parts, we're going to talk about the inner game and the outer game of conversation skills. There is an inner game and an outer game of conversation mastery, and you have to master them both. Inner game consists of the mindsets, the motivation, and the willpower to continually get yourself out there practicing. The outer game consists of the implementation of the techniques, your practice regimen, and your ability to observe what is working and sort of just adjust accordingly, to be almost like a reactionist who is continually refining and adjusting, noticing what works, noticing what doesn't work, and improving upon that. It is necessary to balance both of them. If you have just too much focus on the inner game, it leads to stagnation, procrastination, and eventually loss of skill. The students who only focus on inner game often use this as an excuse to never actually go out there and practice. They're always searching to be in the perfect quote-unquote state, and they're blaming their lack of practice on the fact that they're still working on their inner game. These are usually the same people who spend money on subliminal self-hypnosis and all that other kind of stuff. And I'm not criticizing you if you're one of those people, because I've been one of those people too, constantly thinking that there was something internally that I had to perfect before I can perfect it externally. But it's a balance, and you need to balance the two. The second part of it is outer game, and too much focus on outer game leads to burnout. The students who only focus on outer game, they usually begin strong, but after a few blown sets, some rejection, or the feeling that they're not making progress, they'll just give up or move on to another guru or another get-laid-quick technique. In the beginning, though, I recommend that practice is a mixture of both high-pressure and low-pressure practice. High pressure is the time in the field where you're striking up conversations with women that you actually want to have some sort of relationship with. Low pressure is sparring practice. This is the practice you do with women that you don't have any desire for any sort of relationship. These women can be your friends, your coworkers, classmates, waitresses, bartenders, clerks at stores, the barista at a Starbucks. The final sort of practice that we spoke of in the first session is shadow boxing, and that's no pressure practice. This is the practice you do alone with your video camera or your voice recorder or in front of a mirror. This is the time that you work on your voice tone, your delivery. This is the time that you craft stories, that you rehearse routines, that you're adjusting or tweaking your facial gestures and developing your sense of humor. In the beginning, I recommend a 2-to-1 ratio of sparring to high-pressure practice. This means that for every 1 hour you spend in a bar or club, you should be spending about an hour sparring and an hour shadow boxing. This is ideally how you're going to learn, because if you're only going out to the bars and clubs in that high-pressured environment, like I spoke about in the first session, it's going to retard your learning. It's going to make it harder to learn. But if you're mixing your practice skills between the 3, high pressure, low pressure, and no pressure, that's ideally how this is going to come the quickest. And you're going to be implementing by being out there in these different pressure situations, whether it be the high pressure or the low pressure. You're actually implementing it, and you're taking what you learned and putting it into action, making it part of you. So let's talk a little bit about the inner game of conversation skills. When I think of inner game, I think of 3 main areas that make up your inner game, and that is your discipline. And discipline is sort of what you need to do to make yourself continue to practice every day. It's it's willpower in a sense. It's integrity. The second part of inner game is motivation. Motivation is what it takes to get you pumped and excited for starting conversations, because just having the discipline to do something, yeah, you may make yourself go out to the bar. You may sit there and say, fuck, I told myself I was going to go out and practice tonight. I got to go out and practice. And you go. But if you're not motivated to really want to do it and be excited to do it, you're just going to be going through the motions. And if you're just going through the motions, you're very rarely going to see results, and you're going to get burned out. The third area of inner game is mindsets. And these are the mental tricks you do to keep yourself in the right frame of mind when you're talking to women. All right, so let's first talk about discipline, which I explained is sort of the integrity, it's the willpower, it's what prevents you from saying, fuck this, I don't feel like learning this, it seemed good when I bought this course, but now it just seems like it's going to be too hard. Well, what you got to do with discipline is first thing you got to do is you got to find the time to spend practicing. And you want to find an hour to shadow box. That's the easiest type of practice. That's the low pressure practice, no pressure practice actually. And it's making that time, because we're all going to say that we don't have time, but the thing that I learned over the years is that we all have the same 24 hours in a day. And there's people out there who, in their 24 hours, make brilliant things happen. These guys are like up, around, and about, making deals, closing sales. They're going on dates. They're going on to cocktail parties. They're doing all this in the same 24 hours. And then there's other guys who in a 24 hours, they go to work, they come home, they watch TV, they play a few video games, they chat online, and then the day ends, and they're like, oh, I didn't have time to do anything else. Well, you had the same amount of time as a guy like, let's say, Donald Trump, who's flying around the world, who's, not only does he have time to date beautiful women and, raise kids and all this stuff, but he's also got his hand in about 20 million cookie jars of like casinos and TV shows. And if a guy like him can find the time in the day to do something, you can find the time in the day to spend an hour shadowboxing. It's all about setting your priorities. Same thing with sparring practice. You might say, well, I don't have anybody to have this low pressure interactions where I can practice. Well, you know what? You got to make do with what you have. You got to use the discipline. If you're at a diner and your waitress is relatively cute, relatively within your age group, chat her up, start a conversation with her, start talking to her. Do not let another opportunity slip by. If you're in, Barnes & Noble at the coffee section and there's no girls there to practice on the girl who's giving you coffee. Just talk to her, say a few things. In the next part of this lesson, when I go over the outer game and I go over some of these tactics, you got to force yourself to use it. And that's what discipline is. Discipline is forcing yourself to use it. It's not letting yourself off the hook. And it's also, discipline is forcing yourself to get back out on the field after a night of horrible rejection, because you are going to go out from time to time and you're going to just hate the results you got. And you're not going to want to get back up and do it the next day, but discipline is what makes you do it. So as you can see, the top athletes, the top CEOs, actors, and just about any of the best in the world, the people that are really the peak performers in their field, they must have discipline. Top athletes, they find the time to practice. If it means waking up at 5 a.m. to get to the gym, that's just what they do. If it means adding a few extra laps or swings or jump shots to correct a problem, that's just what they do. And if it means getting back on the field the next night after getting mopped up by their opponent, well, that's just what they do. And you have to have that same integrity, that same fire to get this done. And the reason so is because the mother of discipline is habit. Now, habits are what we do on a daily basis. Well, the key to implementing a new habit is forced consistency for the first month, and that's where the discipline comes in. It's forcing yourself. And I like to call it integrity, because integrity is really saying you're going to do something and sticking to your word. And if you don't have integrity, your chances of success in anything are going to be really slim. You're not going to meet more women. You're not going to become rich, because if you can't count on yourself to do something, then how can anybody depend on you, and how can you trust that you're going to get anything done? So go to the workbook that accompanies this program and write down 3 new habits that will help you implement what you learned. I'm going to give you some suggestions. Maybe one of your habits is going to be to wake up an hour earlier every day and spend it shadowboxing. Go in the other room and just spend an hour crafting a story and practice telling it. Spend an hour listening to yourself on a video recorder or a voice recorder and listening to your tonality, and then spend an hour kind of practicing speaking more clearly or getting rid of any nervous tics that you hear in your voice. You can do something that I thought was a brilliant idea when I heard it is call up those 900 party line chat lines and spend 20 minutes on the phone sparring twice a week. Some people, when I first suggested that, they said, I'm not going to waste my money on chat lines. That's ridiculous. That'll cost me $20. And I said, well, you go to a bar and you spend probably $40, $50 on alcohol, and you talk to maybe one girl that night. Whereas here, you get on the phone and you have a girl waiting to talk to you. Yes, this girl is being paid to talk to you or however chat lines work, but the point is that you're still responsible for carrying that conversation, and you're going to learn by doing it. Spending 20 minutes on the phone with a girl, you're going to realize how to keep a conversation going, and you're going to get better at making small talk and escalating a conversation. Another habit that you might want to implement is go to happy hour every day after work alone and spend an hour chatting up the bartender, the waitress, or any other customers that you might be sitting next to, using the techniques you've learned. Another habit, go out once a week with a little miniature voice recorder, approach women, and record the conversations. Go home, listen to them, and really notice how you sound. Maybe, there's a lot of people that say, I'm doing everything right, and it's still not working for me. Everything you said still isn't working. Well, maybe you're not seeing yourself subjectively. Maybe you're seeing it how you meant to say it. Like you go out and you're using a line or a routine, or you're being cocky funny, or you're teasing a woman, and you know what you meant to do, and you know how you meant it to come out, but when it actually comes out, maybe that's not the way she's interpreting it or other women are interpreting it. And maybe by listening to yourself on a little voice recorder, you'll be able to kind of notice, wait a minute, that joke just totally went over everybody's head. When I said this, the girls kind of got quiet. At this opportunity, she said this, and she really wanted to talk about that more, but I kept talking about something else. And you'll be able to see all these spots in the conversation that when it was going on and you're flustered and you got all the emotion and the adrenaline pumping, you're not noticing it. But now that you're noticing it, you can find out maybe there are some areas that you need to work on. Another habit is maybe you want to pick a number and commit to approaching that many women with an intention of getting her number, bouncing with her, or having sex with her, which means you're going to go out and you're going to say, I am going to approach 10 girls tonight, and I'm not going to stop until I get blown out. Blow me or blow me out. Well, this idea of intention, which I'm going to talk about later when I talk about mindset, is extremely important. Make it your intention to get better at having conversations. Create habits that get you in alignment with this intention. The next factor of inner game is motivation. And motivation also comes back to the idea of intention. I'm not going to lie to you. At times, it's going to seem super easy to just resort back to your old way of communication. Sometimes you're going to feel it's pointless to engage in conversation with people that you don't want anything from. And sometimes you'll be at a bar and you just won't have the drive or the energy required to really make this work. For me, I used to always find myself just not caring enough to get engaged in a conversation. Either they weren't talking about what I wanted to discuss, or it just wasn't worth the 20 minutes of awkwardness to find out if a woman was potentially compatible. There are two things that will really help you overcome this problem with motivation. Their intention, which we just spoke about, and curiosity. First, you need to maintain an intention to get good at this, because every interaction then becomes an acting out of your intention. What I mean by this is every interaction is getting you one step closer to your intention of becoming a great conversation. So now when you're sitting down next to a woman on the train and you find yourself thinking, what's the point of starting a conversation with her? I'll probably never see her again. Even if I get her number, she'll probably give me a fake one. It's just easier to sit here in silence. Well, if your intention is to get better at this, well, at that point you can remind yourself that you have an intention to get better at this, and then decide that you don't want, anything from this interaction, yes. And maybe nothing will come from this interaction, but you want to simply practice and see if you can keep a conversation going for the rest of the train ride. Nothing more, nothing less. Can you overcome the initial block, make that spontaneous conversation, and kind of fight through and get some momentum to carry a conversation until she gets off at the next stop or you get off at the next stop? Can you do that? Do you want to learn how to do that? Well, if you do, you need to have the intention to do it. You can't say, well, I'm not going to get anything out of this. you're going to get something out of it, everything. You're going to be building a skill, and building a skill is more important than any one woman. So by talking to that woman in the train, even if she's like a fat, ugly heifer of a woman, and you have no desire to even be seen sitting next to her, just by talking to her, you're building a skill that's going to translate to other women. And every time you have a conversation, you can't look at it like, well, what am I going to get out of this? I'm not really interested in this girl. But you're building a skill, and now when the right girl comes around, the one that you are interested in, you're going to have that much more practice, and you're going to be that much more better. We're going to talk a little bit more about intention when we talk about mindset in a little bit. The next key to staying motivated to practice your conversation skills is to embrace a sense of curiosity. Let yourself become naturally curious about people and human nature. Let yourself become curious about different ways of communicating. The most successful entrepreneurs were curious. They would ask themselves, what would happen if? The most successful pickup artists are curious. What would happen if? The entrepreneurs might say, what would happen if I invented a search engine that I can run ads on and let other people bid on the ads, and next thing you know, Google's formed. Successful pickup artists might ask, what would happen if I started touching a girl quicker into the conversation? What would happen if I used this opener? What would happen if when I wanted to leave with a girl, I used a comfort routine? Well, there's a scene towards the end of a movie called The Big Kahuna, in which Danny DeVito's character is talking to another salesman. It's really a great monologue, and you probably should go to Google and YouTube the Big Kahuna Danny DeVito monologue. But the gist of it is Danny DeVito's telling a younger salesman that if you want to talk to another human being honestly, as a human being, ask him about his kids, ask him what his dreams are, just to find out for no other reason. I think that's a powerful statement. We always think we need a reason, but if you're curious about another human being, just want to know more, just get yourself in the mindset that you always just want to know more about other people. I also learned something about curiosity about a year back that nearly transformed my ability to communicate with people. And it was I became curious about different subjects. Previously, I didn't follow too much sports, and I felt bored if I got in a circle of people and that's all they were talking about was sports. I wasn't interested in politics, and I had very little knowledge of business or the stock market or anything like that. I really only liked talking about, social dynamics at the time, psychology, that's what I was into, writing. Well, what I did was I forced myself to read a newspaper every day, and not the internet where I could hang out on the sites I liked and just kind of reinforce what I already knew. I forced myself to read the business section of the newspaper, the political section, the sports section, the page 6 gossip section, and I became more educated on these topics. And as I became more educated, I became more curious to learn more. Because it's something that I found is when you don't know anything, you're bored by something. But when you start to learn it a little bit, you want to have a natural reaction to want to learn more. And by becoming a little bit knowledgeable about these things, I became really curious to learn more. And this dramatically improved my conversations because previously, like I said, I only had enjoyed talking about social dynamics, movies, travel. But by learning enough about politics to become curious, when I met someone who was knowledgeable in politics, I had a genuine interest to learn more. If I met a girl who was, let's say in business, I really had an interest in learning more. I was curious to know about, the stock market or banking and stuff because I had known a little bit at this point. If you have trouble getting the motivation to start talking to new people, how about having an intention of curiosity, an intention to learn more about them? As Danny DeVito says, want to know about people's dreams, about their job, about their fears. Just be curious about these things. And the ironic thing about this is, at the same time you're doing this, you begin to understand human beings on a much deeper level. You begin to see the fears, the insecurities, the ambitions, the dreams, the passions that all these other people have. And the more you do this, the more easily you're able to relate to new people. You can empathize with them, and you can kind of see yourself in their shoes. The problem most of us have talking with beautiful women is that we could never empathize with them. We couldn't imagine what it would be like to spend a day inside their mind. What do they think about? What do they care about? What does a beautiful woman fear? What is she insecure about? And so we normally just place her on a pedestal, and we would assume that, this is how she thought. But once you begin to see the bigger picture of humanity and the struggles and passions and the disappointments and the longings that we all share, including even the most beautiful women, you'll be able to take off the mask that you're wearing. And this will unconsciously give the woman that you're talking to permission to take off her mask. And here it is, at this point, that true, honest communication takes place and relationships are built. Unmasking is a technique that we didn't talk much about in this program, but it's something I go a lot deeper in the social training lab. I sent you, along with this program, something called the Chameleon Report, where I talk about the idea of believability. And in that report, I bring up the idea of unmasking. And unmasking is something that's just so powerful and real. And it's not a routine. It's not something that, you're faking. It's like radical honesty. It's getting to the heart of the matter and becoming exposed so that the other person feels comfortable exposing themselves. And that's really where true communication comes. All right, the final of the inner game aspect of conversation skills and the final part of the first part of this final session is mindset. And some refer to this as state or the zone. And the experience that some people describe it as is being in flow. If you go to Wikipedia and you find the definition of the word flow, they describe it as the mental state of operation in which the person is fully immersed in what he or she is doing by a feeling of energized focus, full involvement, and success in the process of the activity. And that's like the most important part of that sentence that I just read is success in the process of the activity. That means that you're so involved, you're so enthused and excited and energized about what you're doing that is your success. The result is not the success. It's the undertaking of the activity is the success. I liken this to like somebody who runs the marathon. Somebody who runs that marathon, generally they're not running the marathon to win the marathon. They're running the marathon because they just want that feeling of being so involved in this goal. And that's where they get that state of flow from. It's not from the possibility of winning the marathon. It's from being engulfed in the process of running a marathon. You ultimately want to live as big of a portion of your life as possible in this state of flow. This is because it's in the proper mindset. If you can get yourself to experience flow, everything will seem to happen naturally. This comes from being outside of your own head. The biggest obstacle most of us face in regards to mindset is being stuck in our own head. I know for me, that was always what prevented me from really having good communication with people was being stuck in my own head, analyzing and double thinking everything I planned on saying. And it's like we're looking for the hidden meanings in words that don't exist. We're focused on the attention that's on us and the eyes that are on us, and we're wondering, what are they thinking? And this prevents us from ever becoming fully engaged in a conversation. The opposite of this, the state of flow, comes when you're so completely engrossed in what you're doing that you're no longer even thinking. You're just kind of going with it. Generally, at times, you're both the observer and the observed. And what I mean by that is, as something's happening, most of the time when you're not in this state of flow, you're the observer, meaning you're witnessing what you're doing. You're talking to somebody, but you're also like that more complex being that knows that you're talking to somebody and kind of analyzing your own self talking to somebody, which is a weird kind of spiritual type of thing to talk about, but it's just reality. That's how we live. We're in the moment, but we're also judging the moment. And in the state of flow, you become one. You're no longer that two things. You're no longer the observed and the observer. You're just one. I think if you read Eckhart Tolle's The Power of Now, he talks about now being in the moment, and that's ultimately what you want to do. Now, so what are some of the mindset shifts that you need to make to enter this state of flow more often and to be in the moment? Well, the first thing you need to do is you need to stop worrying about being in state or in flow or in the zone. The process of consciously thinking about your state will keep you inside your own head. If you're at a bar or you're at a party or wherever you are and you're just thinking, wait a minute, am I in flow yet? And you're noticing and you're wondering, and as you start to talk to somebody, you start thinking, wait a minute, am I in flow? Well, the minute you start thinking if you're in flow or if you're in the right state, you're actually going to be out of state. There's no way that you can be thinking that you're in flow and be in flow, because if you're in flow, you're not thinking about it anymore. Second is you need to own everything about yourself. Like Tommy Lee owns it, like Kanye West owns it. Whatever your interests are, whatever your passions are, whatever excites you, own it. Don't hide from it. Don't be embarrassed by it. If cheesy 80s music makes you groove, then rock on. Don't conform. Be 100% you. You need to do what you need to do to have fun. Take the stick out of your ass. Relax. No one is judging you. Be a big fucking goofball. People would always rather be around a big fun goofball than the quiet guy who stands around quietly judging, too self-conscious to talk, and bitter because he doesn't know what to say and everybody else does. Well, the only reason they do and you don't is because you're not owning yourself. You think that you're more important than you really are and that you have to be this perfect being, and everybody else is just being themselves. So what you want to do is just be yourself and be comfortable with it. The third thing that you want to do is keep it fun. You want to know what the all-time best conversation topic is? It's childhood nostalgia. So when you're talking to somebody, just keep it light and fun. Pull out a Hungry Hungry Hippo reference or a Chutes and Ladder reference. Talk about giving a woman the Care Bear stare. Call a girl Judy Jetson. Make jokes about Garbage Pail Kids or Saved by the Bell or Mr. Belvedere. Tell a girl she looks like Winnie Cooper. Talk about Ren and Stimpy, Smurfette. You know, these things that bring up this childhood innocence and likability. These are just fun things. They're not serious. Just they put you in that mode. They get everybody in that mode of just engaging conversation. Have an intention. If you look at a girl and you want to have sex with her, don't try to deny it to yourself. Instead, look at her and say, I'm going to go over there and I'm going to talk my way into her pants, and I'm not going to stop until I get shot down. It's either blown or blown out. For the longest time, my friends used to make fun of me. They called me 1 foot out Bobby. And I never knew what it meant, but I realized it was because I would never commit to an interaction. I would have 1 foot ready to bolt at any moment. Instead of just saying, fuck it, I'm going to go in for the kill, I would stand there waiting for signs, and I'd always leave the door open for a graceful, face-saving exit if it didn't turn out well. Well, fuck saving face. Make it your intention to get blown out in the first couple sets. Christian Hudson called it the bombing opener. Bomb and bomb bad. Bomb so bad that you can't help but to laugh your ass off with your friends about it. At our Dominican Wingman weekend last year, I took a few students out for what was like a similar exercise. The idea was to just go up to a group of girls and, without even thinking about it, dive right into a conversation. The worse you bombed, the better. And it was hilarious and got us all in a talkative mood for the rest of the night. And since we had already bombed, we had nothing left to fear. Here's the thing with inner game aspect of conversation skills. It'll come to you as you practice more. Every success builds momentum. That momentum can carry you miles. If you're shadowboxing, imagine over and over again the feeling of being in front of a woman and being completely comfortable. And that will become naturally how you feel. The only way you're going to train yourself in the aspect of discipline is to be disciplined. And the only way to motivate yourself is to be motivated. The more motivated you become, the more you'll stay motivated. It's momentum. It's just something in the universe that makes it happen that way. But once you get the momentum going, it carries you and carries you and carries you. And once you become comfortable in front of a woman, that comfort is just how you will begin to feel. It's no longer something that you're consciously trying to do. It's just how you feel. So, that is the end of the first part of the last session. On the next disc, I will go over the second part, which is the outer game of conversation mastery, where I'm going to be talking about more specific tactics and ways to practice those tactics.